having no
you
choice.
have to. Yeah. So, but I keep going to the new one, and then I'm like, no, let's go back. I don't like it.
Yep. So my phone is ringing that you're calling me, even though I'm already in the Hangout.
Mine does that all the time. I hear it on surround sound between like my computer, my iPad, and my phone.
Crazy. So I'm going to try and make it stop, but if I hang up, then...
That's okay. We'll get you back.
Technology never, ever cooperates, eh?
Never.
Okay. Now the phone is on mute, so even if it's going to ring, I'm not going to hear it. So.
Okay. So we're doing the custom sphere maps. You've been putting up some really beautiful new work lately. I've been really loving everything that you're doing. How are you feeling now that you're almost halfway through Sphere 2?
I don't know. I'm still sort of all over the place a little bit. Like most of the stuff that I shoot, that I put in the community is not the same as the stuff that I shoot that you may or may not see that I post publicly, which is, you know, my ability to shoot documentary style stuff is limited to my ability to get to those kinds of things where I can do it, right? So,
right.
Barring just short of following my kids around with a camera for, you know, ever, which they're patient, but they're not that patient, you know. They don't really appreciate me doing it too much. So, you know, events, you know, we just had Christmas and stuff, so there was lots of opportunities. And believe it or not, for whatever reason, my family was mostly okay with me taking photos, even though they typically are like, I get flipping the bird, and I get all kinds of nasty stuff from people. So lots of shots of this, which is, or, you know, just things in the frame or whatever they can do to just, you know, make me upset, they'll do. So that didn't happen this time. So, you know, maybe things will change in the future. But so yeah, there's been a little bit of stuff, and you can see in that layout from the book that a lot of them were Christmas photos and stuff. So
yeah. Okay.
But beyond that, I don't really do a lot of it yet. So
did you bring page spreads for critique, or did you bring actual images?
You said to bring 5 images to critique, so I have an album. I don't know if you want to.
We can do either. We can do both. Whatever you feel is most beneficial. I know that you were hating on your album a little bit. I was actually just talking about
it was a really frustrating experience, and I know that you had the final critique for the layout of the book. So like, it doesn't matter to me, which they're done, right? So because you said we could sort of go out of order, so I was just doing stuff as it hit me to do, and I'm glad I did that of my own family stuff before I went to the trouble of trying to do one for someone else.
Right.
I was able to go like, holy crap, like this is a giant, really not very satisfying experience. I enjoyed going through my own photos and seeing, you know, the year's worth of photos that I was able to collect and things like that. And it took me a while to do. It wasn't, which I guess if you have a client, then you've been shooting them, they're all in one place, so you don't have to do that curating. But and it was good that I did it at the end of the year, so I had, you know, I could sort of do that on personal, go through your own years full of stuff, right? So it was a bit of a feel-good kind of thing.
Nice.
But the actual laying stuff out was pulling my freaking hair out. I really didn't like it very much, which is strange because I used to do work along those lines before when I had a paying day job, right? So I didn't think that I would really hate it as much as I did, but I didn't. And like, I really was, I'll look at your hangout that you just did. I didn't get the invite until you were probably 3/4 of the way through it. So I missed the beginning part of it where you were laying the stuff out in Photoshop. If I could come up with something on my own that was more straightforward, then that would be probably better than having to try to use some company's software that they've developed for their own products, which is frustrating as hell.
Yep, that's why I left Graphic Studio. I didn't like their
You're used
software.
to using the fine tools of Photoshop, and then it's like being given a box of crayons. You know?
Yeah, no, I agree.
And trying to edit stuff in their software is just, it makes me want to scream. So by the end of it, I was just really glad that it was over and done with, and I didn't, you know. So I don't know at this point if that's what it has to be, then I'm not going to be very happy about doing that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
The whole point of this is to be, you know, on board with the work that you're doing, you know, and not hate it.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't want to hate it and then do that. So I don't know where that puts me for the rest of everything else that I'm doing. So we'll see.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the 5 images that you brought, and then I have you for an hour. Are you in a hurry? Like, can you hang out?
I'm good as long as I don't get, there's potentially someone's going to come by for,
Okay.
but I don't know when that's going to happen, so we'll just have to see. So I shared the link to the album if you want, like it's a Google Photos album, or do you want to do the screen share, or do I want to do, like, it doesn't matter to me.
Let's see. I will screen share.
I think that there is the link to the album.
Perfect. Okay. I got it.
Okay.
Okay. So can you see that?
Yes. Hey, look at that.
Hey. Okay. So got it. So are you pretty much primarily shooting in black and white? Do you like black and white better than color?
I like black and white right now. I like it a lot, and most of the time when I end up doing portraits, they end up being turned into black and white. Clients don't tend to always like that, so I don't really know how I'm going to get around that. But to me, they feel a lot different when they're in black and white. Like you get that look to it in black and white that you don't necessarily get with color. So.
Yeah, I
just go to that. That's just my go-to for. I don't do that with everything that I shoot, but this style of photography really lends itself well to black and white.
I agree. Yeah, I agree completely, and I really love your images in black and white. I think that your specific style is most prominent when they're in the black and white photos. I think that they have a lot more potency. As far as people not liking it, you're going to have people that aren't going to like it, and you're going to have people that are going to love it.
Yep.
And I'm fine with people being like, no, I don't want to work with you because I really want color images. My grandma argues that point all the time. She's like, color photography is a privilege, Jessica. We didn't have it when I was your age. I want to see my grandbaby's rosy cheeks.
Yes, my mom says we don't live in a black and white world. Color photos should be in color.
Yeah. And there's benefit to both, but and I can't remember who said it, but somebody said if you want to photograph their clothes, you photograph in color. If you want to photograph their soul, you photograph in black and white. And I think that your images are the epitome of that statement. You have a habit of photographing particularly children in a way that captures both the childlike lifestyle, but it makes them look like old souls. And I think it's very, very unique. And I think that's what moves me most about your images. And I think that a lot of these, looking over your work the last couple of weeks, that if they were in color, they would be too visually busy with all the information that's going on and having all that color competing on top of it. So, so tell me a little bit about this image. Who is this?
This is my son. This was actually on his the day of his 13th birthday party, or what qualifies as a party when you're 13. He had some friends over, and this was just a shot of him. I was just following them around basically for the day, taking photos. I got them all super soakers, and they went swimming, and we had a campfire, and that was the party. So they were just kicking around the yard doing whatever they were doing, and I was, the fly on the wall sort of taking photos of them. So this was just him. He was in the driveway talking with one of his buddies, and our driveway is, you see the cars in the driveway. That's what my driveway looks like and always has. So this is him and his environment. There's no, this is what he looks like, and this is him. I see him as the man that he's coming into. This is that year where stuff is changing for him. So this is like, he doesn't look like the little boy that he's looked like his whole life in this image. So this is one of my favorites of him.
I agree. This is one of my favorites that I've seen from you. I kind of like that he has a little bit of a rebel thing going on too. Like the hat instead of the helmet, I think, is him, veering away from childhood a little bit and at that sort of cornerstone. And I think that story definitely gets translated. You can see him wanting to be more grown up, but I can still definitely see the little boy in him too, which I love. I love the texture on the cars and the gravel, and I love the shallow depth of field behind, and that everything else is fading out. I think that this is a stunning portrait. And I don't know if you did it purposefully or not, but the fact that anything that has heavy blacks or darkness is leading right into him, and all around him you have sort of this reverse vignette going on where we actually start to like blow out the highlights and be a little overexposed around him, particularly to the top. And I think that that forces your eye right to the center of the image and focused on him, and he is tack sharp. So it's really, really good from just technical standpoints. Aside from the fact that you absolutely got the emotion and told the story with the image. And I really don't have any harsh critique. The only thing that jumps out at me is something that I might have pulled out of the photo or changed is this little post here. That grabs my attention just because it's coming up into the leaves. So the texture and the color around it makes it really stark. I might have been inclined to go in and just clone that out. But other than that, I think it's a beautiful shot.
There was not a lot of intent with it when you talk about doing that intentionally. There wasn't. I don't know how I managed to just do that sort of unconsciously, but I can't take credit for saying, yeah, I saw that and that's the way I took it. No, didn't see it. That's the way I took it, but it wasn't a conscious thing to happen. I don't know why.
Maybe it wasn't something that you were thinking about of, oh, I'll do this, but it's something that's showing up very much repetitively in your images. So I think it's part of your...
The first person to have said it. I know that in my last critique with Ron, he had the same things to say about a few of the images that I had taken. He's like, do you see that there's this and there's this and there's this? I'm like, I didn't see it. I just saw the whole shot to take. So
yeah.
Once you pick it apart and you see all those elements, then you go, oh, okay, well, this is why it works. But that wasn't my intent when I took it, because you don't have time anyway. You have to see that the image is going to work right away, and never mind why it's going to work right away, or sort of analyze because things are happening. It's not a posed thing. This is just what you see, and you have to be able to see that it's going to work or not, right?
Well, I think that's where raw talent starts to converge with skill and knowledge, and you have a lot of raw talent that just comes across naturally then. But I do think that it's good in critique to pay notice to those things and start to see them, so that even if it's not a conscious choice, then it's something that you'll continue looking for. But I think you just have a natural eye for seeing the shot.
Well, and I've been shooting this way for a long time too, so it's not, and it actually has been a long time. When I started looking back on when I first started posting in 2010 on my very first blog, it was like, these are the kinds of shots that I was doing even back then. So when I was looking back, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've been doing this for a long time. So it's a thing that just comes naturally after, once you've been doing it for a long time. You don't really think about it as much. So
okay, so tell me a little bit about this one.
So this is Lacey. In our front yard we have a couple apple trees, and we had a bumper crop of apples this year. So we spent a day picking apples and donated them to various neighbors. We have an elderly neighbor who actually came by and said, could I come by and pick some of these apples? And I said, oh, you know what, I have 2 healthy, strapping kids. I will send them out to do it for you. So that's what we did. So they picked the apples and I took the photos, and I really liked the light that was under while we were inside underneath the tree. And it was, it's October, so it wasn't really a bright sunny day or anything. And there was just I liked the story of what was happening while they were in this activity. So, and some people might not like the way it's composed or whatever, and I'm sure it breaks all kinds of rules, but I still really like what this image says to me.
I'm all for breaking the rules. Picasso says know the rules so you can break them like an artist. Yep. And so I think it's just knowing when the rules can break and when they can't. As far as the photograph, how much time are you spending in retouching, or are you basically just turning it black and white? Is this mostly out of camera, or are you spending?
Okay, so by retouching, I have a way, it's not just converted to black and white. I have a process that I use to get to black and white. I don't just like desaturate and move on.
Okay.
So, but it doesn't take me very long, and there isn't a lot of, unless there's obvious things that like I'm not doing a lot of cloning or removing distracting elements or things like that. So, so you know, my editing is kind of minimal for these kinds of shots.
Okay.
Because I don't really want them to look very perfect anyway. You know, to me, that's part of the appeal. So, I mean, if something is glaringly obvious and I missed it like that post, then, you know, that I would go back and do. And I try to see those distractions more and more in camera when I'm taking the photos. So I try not to include them in the first place. So.
Well, I love this one. You managed to avoid something that I see very often when people are taking shots. Like, everybody's told, oh, go stand your people under a tree so that you don't have the harsh overhead light.
Right.
And a lot of new people go, okay, I'll go do that. And then they get dappled light across.
Which is impossible. I hate dappled light.
Yeah, and it's never flattering. It only works on deer.
Yeah.
You know, so you managed to avoid that. I love the rim light that is on the apple that she's picking and on her fingers. And it's interesting because with portraiture, usually the attention is on the face. You know, if there's a person on it, you want to make sure that the eyes are tack sharp, if not the whole face. And here it's not. But it works because the star of the image is actually the apple in the hand reaching for it, not necessarily her face, but you can still get her personality through it, which I think is very interesting and very difficult to do and make work successfully. There's a couple of elements in this that bother me. I'm not a huge fan of the perspective and the angle you're at for two reasons. One, I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of her face, her lips and her chin, and her arms kind of cutting that out. And two, the foreground leaves that are super, super fuzzy, I think are muddying the top of the image. And because they're so close to the apple, I think that it's a little visually distracting when what's behind her is so tack sharp. So you're kind of at the mercy of, one, the moment and capturing the right moment, and two, you know, it's not like you can like tell the tree to like lift its branches a little bit or move out of your way. Like you can tell people to like pull the hair off their shoulder or something. So but I do think like that like cloud of leaf blur is just a little bit visually distracting. But I still think that it's a really, really beautiful shot all the way around. And I love this style that I'm seeing from you. And it wasn't as prominent when I was looking through some of your images at the very beginning when you first signed on. And I don't know what has come over you lately, but all of the images that that I'm seeing from you lately are just stellar, and this one's no exception. So, you know, I don't think that this one would actually score well if we like put it into competition from a technical aspect, because you are breaking lots of rules. But I think that this image and the one before it, there's something about your images that have like an heirloom legacy quality that someday when she's someone's grandmother and somebody sees this, they're going to be like, oh my God, I have this picture of my grandmother picking this apple when she was a little girl, kind of thing. And that for me is the true test of a photograph's merit, when you're photographing honestly, and real moments. It's different with, you know, it's different with edited fashion and portraiture and even boudoir, but like this is so honest and so raw in its composition and real. And I think that because you're willing to do that where everybody else seems to be moving towards perfection, you know, and retouching and composing the perfect photograph, that yours actually have more potency and more intimacy than a lot of other photographs that I've seen this year. So well done.
Thank you.
Okay, tell me about this one.
So this is obviously Cameron again. My daughter was in a she had a showing in a gallery in Collingwood, which is there was about a 5-hour round trip for us to get up there to see her photos hanging on the wall and come back. And while we were up there, we stopped along this pier, which it's on, Collingwood is on Georgian Bay, Lake Huron area in Ontario up here. So that I don't get to see very many horizons. So, cause I live in a valley. So when we were out there, I was like, I don't care how much time we have, we're stopping so that I could take photos of a flat horizon. So they had this pier, and we were just, it wasn't a very nice day and we didn't have a lot of time, but we, took a little walk and I took some photos. This looks like it's unstaged, but it actually is, because I said, okay, you sit here and I'm going to take some photos. So
Yeah.
that's what we did. And this is him. This is how he looks. This is how he is right now at 13. And I just really like this shot because he's very relaxed around me, because of the camera is just part of life for them. So I'm having trouble translating that to shooting with other people. But these guys are so comfortable that it doesn't faze them at all when I say, okay, just sit there and just sit there and I'm going to take some photos. So I just really like the way this came out, because this is really him.
I love this one too. I love the shallow depth of field. The lighting on it is beautiful. The only thing that grabs my attention visually is it looks like, and I don't actually know if this is in post or if it's just a highlight, but like right here along the back, it's like almost like a little halo. And I think that we could probably go in and just tone that down, just dodge and burn just a little bit, because it separates him from the background just a little bit. And that's really, really nitpicking. I'd also want to clone out right here.
Right.
Whatever these two are, because these spots make you want to jump off his hand and follow them away from him, and he should definitely be the star. But I love the soft focus in the horizon line and the texture on his hoodie, and I love his expression, and he's got this sort of I'm too cool mom, but he's still got this little boy smirk, and I love the in-between stage that you're at right now with him, and that we're seeing and appreciating him, not necessarily being a little boy, but also being a little boy.
Yep.
And I just think that these images are going to be really, really cherished 50 years from now and 100 years from now. Like, you're looking at them from the standpoint of mother, and what these will be even for you in 10 years when he's not, 13, he's 23 and he's 33. And, that being what your little boy was. But at the same time, other people that will never know him as a child will know him as a child just by looking at this image and who he was. And I think that's really powerful. Okay. Tell me about this one.
So this is my niece, Taylor. This is she had a solo show at a little pastry shop in town here. And so this was the opening day of that solo show. She's an artist as well. Extremely talented, and so this was just, I brought my camera, and this is one of the photos that I took. We were sitting right at the front. There's this beautiful window right at the front of the restaurant, so this just beautiful soft light coming in, and this is just a nice shot of my niece. She's and this is her. She didn't know I was taking photos of her at the time, so this is just her really unguarded. So
this is beautiful too. Yeah, this is a beautiful one too. There's a couple elements in this one that jump out at me.
Yeah, there's some things I don't like it as well, like that. I don't like the light up there, but and there's that light but it is what it is, right?
Yes, but I still think you could probably go in and I would actually just take her and kind of cut her out from the background and turn the contrast down and the exposure down just a little bit to separate her just a little bit more. Because right now there's 4 lights competing with her. There's the white from him specifically on his neck, and then the light, and then him right behind her head, and then definitely this girl because she's got her arms exposed too, so that's a lot of white comparatively. She jumps out at me more than the other ones because she's so bright. I would definitely go in and darken her down just a little bit, or even maybe crop it out. I think you could probably come in and crop down a little. I like the light, but it is it is a little bright to make you jump, and they're just competing with her because her face is the brightest thing.
Right.
The only other things that jump out at me are this, I guess it's another lamp.
Wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would come out for me, I think, because it's coming right out of the middle of her head, and whatever's in here, the white again jumps out because everything around it's so dark. So there's a couple of little things that I think could be done. I would go in, I would turn down the exposure, and I would turn down the contrast, and I might even go in and blur it out a little more just so she jumps out from the back. But again, I love her expression. I love that we feel her personality and just her personal energy radiating from it. It's very busy bustle coffee shop kind of feel, but also very calm and very serene. Like it's
That's
like in
exactly
the movies.
What was in there. So because it's a coffee shop, and it was her opening, so there was a lot of people in there, and a lot of background noise and background movement and things. So and this was just just a quiet little moment that I think she was speaking to somebody that you see off frame. So yeah, it was just that quiet little moment in this bustle of what was happening that day.
Yeah, so I think it reminds me of like the scenes in the movies where the beautiful woman walks in and like everything stops and everybody turns to look at her because she's so enchanting. And you kind of gave her this moment in there where everything else kind of faded into the background. So I think adding to that by actually fading the background a little bit more might make it just a little bit more striking, but it's still a beautiful portrait of her.
Part of the reason why I don't crop a lot of things. I don't never crop a lot, but I don't for this to me, the story is in the setting as much as it is about the person that's in the photograph. So if I cropped everybody out, then it would be a nice well lit photo of her, but it doesn't say anything about the story, about the setting that she's in. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I completely agree with you. This story works because of the story of the image, not just because of her. Because honestly, if we took all of it out, if we cut her out and put her on a black or a gray backdrop with nothing in the background, it would be mediocre at best. But I still think that if we just went in and just kind of darkened down and just made her the star of the image, because right now I feel like she's competing a little bit with everybody around her just because of the lighting. So not much. I definitely want to keep them in. I would just want to like tone down the highlights a little bit and maybe pull them away from like true white to a little bit more of a light gray so that she popped just a little bit more. But I do think you're absolutely right, and the image has to contain that information to tell the story. Okay, tell me about this one.
This is my kids again. There's always lots of photos of my kids when it comes to these things because they're the ones I'm around the most. So this was actually taken not very long ago. This was 10 days before Christmas, and it was super warm up here in Canada. Last year, this time it was minus 25 degrees Celsius, and right now it's about 5 degrees, and this day I think it was about 14, so definitely well above freezing. And they were just out playing catch and stuff, so I took advantage of them playing to take some photos. And this is what they do when they're in the backyard, and for this might not be the kind of image that I would take necessarily for somebody who was paying me to, unless this was what they wanted. But this is just a memory for me of and for my kids too, of what they do and how they hang out in the yard. So
I'm gonna disagree with you and say this is exactly the kind of image that you should be taking for your clients. Most people go into a portrait studio and they sit everyone down and they match their clothes and everybody sits up straight and smiles and they look beautiful and we capture them at that age, but you're capturing who they were at that age, not what they looked like. And that is a very, very important distinction that a lot of photographers forget, especially when doing children and family photography. Even though her face isn't in this and she's tack sharp and the boy is blurred out. So we actually don't have a face to connect with in this image. You're completely connecting with the energy and the emotion of the moment. And I think that that's just as essential. So while I don't think that you could sell this is the only image that you took, I think when you put it in a collection like the 5 images we just looked at, it absolutely becomes an essential part of essentially a visual family quilt of moments that you're taking. And again, I love it. It's so natural and sincere and honest, and it's not, you know, we're in a world that's so over processed and over filtered, and you know, it's where, you know, people sit and take 25 selfies to find one that their chin's the right angle, and you know, like we've just gotten away from sincere, genuine moments. And I think that there's something really honest and raw about the way that you shoot and what you capture that's being lost. And I think the generations that follow us are going to mourn not having that from us. So this is absolutely exactly the way that I would shoot for your clients. And this collection is incredible. You will be, you know, there's a few things in the one of your niece that I think could have been improved, but that still puts you as the first apprentice that has ever come through any House Lark to get 4 3 stars.
Well, there you go.
And so, and you know, like people tease me all the time in the masters community that I'm really harsh in critiques, and I am, because I want you guys to improve. And I have to really, really look in these images to find anything to offer you. Because going, oh, that's a beautiful photo, you know, it strokes your ego a little bit, but it doesn't help you look at anything for improvement. So when you're scoring 3s and I'm saying it's a beautiful image, I got nothing for you. Like, that's it. You're done. It's like being the skinny girl at the gym. You're like, go home. You're already done, you know? Like, and I think what you're hitting on is accomplishing everything that I want to see in Sphere 2. You have a very distinctive style. I could very easily take a collection of pictures of kids from everyone in all of House Lark from 0 to 30 levels. And I could very easily pick yours out, which is very distinctive, because that is so essential with clients, because then they can't get that image anywhere except for you, which means the price goes up, which is good for us financially. And it helps you start building a name and a reputation for yourself as an artist. You have the technical expertise. All the images are very well from a technical and, you know, from purely photographic and, technical standpoints of photography and composition and lighting. But you also know when to break the rules, or when the rules become less important than the feeling of the photograph. And usually I see photographers, myself included, that lend more to one than the other. Like, I will sacrifice technique and precision all day long for the feeling of a photograph. And there's plenty of people that study and study photography and know all the rules and the laws and what you do and don't do. But they can't get that emotion and that you know, almost spiritual connection with their clients, because they're too focused on that. And you have a very high potent blend of both, which I think is really profound. So I think you're done from the photos standpoint of figuring out what your style is and what you're trying to say and where you're at. Like, we've found it. This is the heart of everything else being built off of, which is really good. So now it just becomes a matter of continuing to refine and perfect that, and then figuring out how to package and market it. Does that ring true? Do you feel that? Or
yeah, well, and I knew I knew before coming into this sphere that I had found what my vision was, and it's really that it is about the story, and it's not about, like, tack sharp eyes are great if that's where the story belongs, but the focus and where the light needs to be and where the tack sharp focus needs to be is where the story is. So for me, it's always, even if you don't see any faces like the kids playing catch, and you don't see anybody's face, But it's not about the story isn't about the face. The story is about what's happening in the frame. And that's always what I'm looking for. It's not, if it happens to be that the story is the face that I can see, then that's what I will shoot. But I'm always looking for the story and the technical aspects of it. And that's part of the reason why, like, I shoot shallow depth of field, is because I want the focus to be on what I want the focus to be on. So when you see things blurred out in the background, if I had taken that shot at f8, everything would be in focus and it would be so busy it wouldn't look like anything more than somebody's cell phone shot.
Right.
I do that on purpose because it's part of putting the focus where I want it to be. And I've known that for a while. So getting people to come around and like you said, refining that. Part of that has been, going to black and white more often and perfecting, or sort of getting a better feel for how I want the end result to look. Is part of that, refining it. But I knew going in what the vision was, and it took me, a dozen years to get there, but I did finally get there. So, and now it's a matter of part of what I'm doing now is taking away, saying no to stuff that doesn't fit into that, and being more selfish about what I'm going to decide to shoot. So if somebody says to me, "Do you want to do this?" I can say no, even though financially it might not be the best decision to make. It's not putting me in that, keeping me in that path of sticking to what I enjoy to do. So. Well, the people who come to it, because I just did a session and there was 12 people. Wow. And even if she knows my stuff and she follows my work and she thinks it's wonderful, they still wanted, everybody sat in a certain way and posed a certain way, and it was tedious for everybody. And I don't understand why people insist on spending all that money and an entire day of trying to herd cats, get them all looking good, get them all feeling good, get them all dressed up nice, so that we can do this awkward 3 hours of shooting. When I said, if we had just done a barbecue or a bonfire and you guys could hang out and do what you guys always do when you get together, nobody would have been dressed up, everybody would have just been in their natural, and I could have taken photos that you would have really resonated with at that point. And she agreed, but at the same time, having been through that process with her, I know that she's not going to come back to me for that. So now if she comes back to me again, unless that's what she wants, I'll tell her no, that I don't want to do that kind of shoot with you again. This is what I do. If that's what you want, then let's do it. And if not, then, find someone else to take your photos. So.
Well, and I think that's really good. And the interesting thing is that I think when we're starting out, and I did this too, like if you could go back and look at my first website, I shot everything. I was willing to do your seniors and your pets and your family and your weddings and your boudoir and, and couples and everywhere in between. And it didn't take me long to start weeding out all those things. But the interesting thing is, and I've said this to a couple of people, so you might have heard it before, there's a difference between being a general practitioner and being a heart surgeon. Mm-hmm. And the general practitioner says, oh, well, I can have a lot more clients because a lot of people will get generally sick more than have, heart attacks and need transplants and stuff like that. So I'm widening out my base and I can make more money that way. And we do the same thing. We go, oh, well, if I'm willing to shoot everything, if I'm willing to be a general photographer that does all these different genres, or even when I get into my specific field, if I'm going to be a family photographer, but I'm willing to do the portraits and do the lifestyle and do this, then I can get people that wouldn't come to me otherwise, so I can make more money. But the downside of that is that you get paid less money. Specialists always make more money. So you would trust your heart surgeon to tell you that you have a cold or the flu and prescribe you antibiotics or whatever, but you would not trust your general practitioner to perform open heart surgery on your baby. No. And you would pay a lot more money for the heart surgeon because he's a specialist. So the interesting thing is that when I started really defining what it was that I was doing and I cut out everything else, I had more clients and I got paid more money the following year because there was no confusion, about what I was doing. So even with weddings, like I lost a couple of weddings, more than a couple, because they didn't want their grandmother going online and seeing a picture of a girl in a G-string next to their bridal portrait as the next album, because that happened to be, and I can totally understand that. You know, at the same time, even though people can go to my website and see very clearly that what I do is boudoir for clients, I still get calls for weddings. I still get calls for children's portraits. I still get calls for senior pictures. Like, people still assume that if I can take beautiful pictures doing this, that I can do it with other things. And then you can make the decision whether or not that's something that you want to do. And it's okay to make the decision, yes, 1 month or 1 week, and no to something else. Like,
Sure.
if you meet with someone and somebody is like immediately giving you the, this is going to be a problem client, say no. If you meet someone and they want to do it and it happens to be the week that your car dies and you need an extra $500 in the account anyway, then yes, say yes. It's okay. You know, I think people feel like they have to be very definitive one way or another. But one thing I do encourage is that you show the work that you want to be hired for. So even like with this session, if you sat down and did everybody perfectly posed, I wouldn't necessarily be putting that on my website or my social media, because you'll get more calls to do that.
Because that's not, I don't want more people to call me up and say, I want that.
Exactly.
It was difficult and not very enjoyable. And posing is, you know what, I would much rather take photos of people just doing what they're doing than say, you know, your elbow, you know, you have to change this or put your hip this way, or to me, there's a skill involved in doing that. I don't have that skill, at least not yet. Maybe one day I might decide that this is something that I want to pursue more, but it's hard work to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't,
It's a totally different skill set. And I didn't realize how many people have a hard time with posing and knowing what angles work and how to move the body, and how different, very subtle changes, like bringing your shoulder forward as opposed to back, changes the whole body language, because it comes very, very naturally to me. But you see photos and moments with people in a way that I don't. So I think that you're more of a unicorn. I think that you have a skill set and a vision that's much more rare in our genre. I don't see too many people that can nail it that precisely and find that exact moment as easily as you seem to. And I can only say that based off of what I see, because maybe you didn't. Maybe you took 500 photos of your daughter picking apples and posted that one, because that's always the trade-off. They're like, oh my God, how is every
stuff? You don't see any of the stuff that didn't.
Yeah. You know, and people say that to me all the time. They're like, oh my God, how is every photograph you post so beautiful? I'm like, because I only post the ones that are beautiful. I don't post the ones where it's got motion blur and her thighs look fat and I pick the wrong angle, you know? But that's the thing, is that whether you got that in one frame or on frame 286, it doesn't matter, as long as that's what people are seeing. And as long as, when it comes down to it, if you spend time with a client, you know you're going to get that shot, you know, because that's the one that they see. So you are turning it out right now almost unequivocally. Everything you post is good. It's really good. So I think you're beyond the point where the Arcanum or other education is going to benefit you to invest in, to continue to hone your artistry, because I think you're there to where you can start making money, and good money. So I think the focus now needs to shift into, okay, I have the product, because that's what the photographs are. You have the product, you know how to shoot, you know how to edit, you know how to turn it out. And you have a distinctive style that is not going to be easily replicated by other people, because a lot of it is how you see. And that is the one thing you could teach right now. You could teach people how to go take pictures and what your settings are at, and you could show them how you edit, and they would not be able to get that shot because of the way that you see. And that is the sweet spot. That is the thing that nobody can compete with you on, because they don't see the way that you do. So now it's just a matter of taking the product that we have and going, yes, okay, this is a good product. This is something marketable, and figuring out how to package that and market it. And if you're getting these beautiful shots, but you're following that up with a couple of days or even hours, you know, sitting in front of the computer, pulling your hair out because you're hating the process of putting them into an album or something, then that's not going to work for you. because you'll burn out. You will. You'll hate it, and you'll avoid your computer at all costs, like it has leprosy. I know, I've done it. So let's talk a little bit about the album process and why you hate it so much. What was the problem?
I don't know what I don't know what I was trying to figure out, if was it the software itself, because I ended up going with the one that Sandra had, just because the few that I've looked into and just downloaded the trials or whatever of that they had going were frustrating and didn't have enough controls, or they were, the templates were this way, but you couldn't change them or whatever. And so I tossed a lot of those ones right away before even putting any images in because of that. But even once I got into and went, okay, so this isn't completely idiotic, and yeah, okay, I can load some images into this. I still found by the time I was done page whatever, I think I don't know how many pages I ended up with, close to 40 or something, that they all just started to look and feel the same. And even once I started changing things around a little bit, it was like, this is part of the reason why I don't crop a lot of my stuff, is because it becomes like a rabbit hole in itself of which is the best way for this to look. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
And laying this out and putting them in like what you were doing in the previous hangout there, deciding, what you're going to focus on and should you crop it this way or that way, or just becomes like every single page becomes, it took me hours to do that. I bet you I was at that for in total, probably 6-hour process.
Well, what is the software you're using? That's not like a drag and drop program. What are you doing?
It is kind of a drag and drop thing. I think I did it on, I'm trying to figure out where did I do that? I did it on their website, I guess. I can't remember now the name of the company that Sandra said that she was using. So I think after watching what you were doing, I think I'm going to go back and look at that hangout again from the beginning, so I can see how you laid out your pages in Photoshop, and then just try and see if I can do it on my own to see if it's less
irritating,
because I'm comfortable with Photoshop and how it works. So if I can, and even if I end up with a couple of basic templates on my own, then maybe that'll make that process a little bit less like I want to pull my hair out.
Yes, that's interesting.
And then of course, once I, when I did all that, and then like you were saying before, they start at like 20 pages or whatever, and then from there you pay for each spread after that. And then when I did that, and of course that company is in the UK and it's British pounds and then the Canadian exchange, and it was like, holy Toledo, look at the price of this thing. I'm not getting this printed for myself. Not ever going to happen. As much as I love those photos and everything about them, there's no way that I'm going to spend that money. And that's just the price of the printing. That wasn't, paying myself for my own time. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Hang on one second.
Sure. Okay, so we just did this in another hangout, but I'm gonna screen share while we're waiting. So there's a couple of you guys watching. I think that's really important too, that you guys are paying attention to what you like doing and what you don't like doing. Because the idea is to get rid of everything you don't like.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries. Okay, I'm going to screen share real quick because I think that this will work a lot better for you than what you're currently going through. And I was going through this in the Hangout. You can watch the whole thing if you want. But I do all of my designs in Photoshop, and then I just save them as templates. So it's super simple, and I think that you'll work really well this way too because of the way you shoot. So when I'm shooting, I'm just looking to leave a lot of empty space that isn't essential to the information. So even like the image of your daughter picking the apple, there's tons of space around her with the leaves and stuff that would make it really easy to put in other images. So I would say design and offer 2, maybe 3 different sizes for albums, if albums are what you want to use. I use Fineo. I love them. I don't know if they ship to Canada. I imagine they do, but maybe not. There's also, is it Epoca albums? I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but I hear really, really good reviews from them. It's EPOCHE, I think, or EPOCA.
Okay.
I would look up them. They are out of Canada. Renee Robin uses them and she loves them. I met them at WPPI last year, and if I wasn't already sponsored with Fineo, I would probably go jump on their bandwagon because their people are really awesome too. You're probably still looking at about the same pricing and printing, but on the upside, they're local, so you're paying much less shipping than if you're having it shipped internationally.
What I was going to say about even any of the companies that I found in the States, like I used to be with Smug Mug, and one of the reasons why I stopped dealing with them was because they don't have Canadian print labs, and the shipping cost was insane, and sometimes more than the product.
You might just do a Google search too. Like right now I'm looking for a print company to do the museum prints that I want to do for like the galleries and stuff, and just do a local search and find a print lab that's actually near to you. I would look up I can't even pronounce it, but I'll send you the link for you want to look up archival pigment printing houses or printers and see what you can find. Museum quality prints are another one. They tend to index under that in Google. And then just put in your hometown or the nearest large town. Like I always put in Philadelphia because I'm 20 minutes from there.
Right.
But when I'm designing for albums, I have like the square and I have the rectangle, and I can design it as a landscape or a portrait for the rectangle, but like 9.5 by 13, and then it goes down. I have like, like an 8 by 12, and then a 6 by 8 for the smaller parent albums. And then I like the square albums personally. So this is 10 by 10. So you just make the file size 10 by 20 because you design them as spreads. And then I put my guidelines in. Fineo has a 3/8 inch safety line. You don't put anything outside of that because of the way that they cut it. So I put 3/4 of an inch, and then I know everything that's in is safe. And then basically what I'm doing is going through and looking for images that have a lot of negative space. So something like this, will work really well, and it takes up most of the space. And then I'm basically just going through with the paintbrush tool and sampling areas that are near it. And because you tend to shoot at shallow depths of field, this will work really well for you too. So you're just like sampling and following the colors to stretch it so that it adds in a lot of negative space. And then basically once you get that in, then I'm looking for 1 or 2 other photos. If you're shooting all in black and white, it becomes really easy. And you can just pick them and lay them out, but it helps it not be busy, and it helps it be visually interesting. If you have one image that's the center focus, but still the background kind of thing. So these are, for me, because I'm usually shooting events, these are usually the detail shots of everything. It's like B-roll because they're still the background. And because I shoot them lighter and a little overexposed, they don't compete with the 2 main images for attention. So because they're darker and a little more contrasty, they stand out from the background. And then sometimes I'll add, like a white frame around them, or I'll add like a shadow cast behind them to make them pop off the page a little bit. But I'll sit and lay them out, and it takes me 2 to 5 minutes to pick the images and set them out. And then what you can do is you can actually go through and select them over the top. Let me do it correctly. And then you just go down to your actual layer here and hit delete. And it cuts out the space here. So then the next time that you have an image, when you put it in, you can resize it behind it, and it doesn't affect it because it's still kind of a drag and drop, but that way you have control over how it looks, and your images and pages aren't looking like everybody else's. So maybe that one works fine, but maybe I just want to focus really close because she's always talking about how beautiful his mustache is. You know, so you can sit and you can play with it behind and do it, but it'll still fit in that layout. But for me, one of the biggest issues when I'm looking at a lot of professionally designed albums is the fact that they leave all this white.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all, and that's the image. Like, and I don't understand why they do that. And I've seen photographers that I like genuinely admire, and they'll have a spread that looks like this, you know, and it'll have like one image over here. And so I look, and a lot of times like they're leaving all this info out, and they'll have like the two images here and this whole page bare, and then you'll open up and it'll be like one tall image on this side and this whole thing's bare. And I'm looking at it and I'm going through and I'm like, you're paying for all of these spreads. Like there's 8 full pages, 8 full spreads in this album that you paid for that have no information on it. And I guess they like the simplicity of it, but I think it's a waste of space, especially when you're paying for the print costs. And I would feel that way as a client too. Like, you're charging me for extra spreads. Like, I don't want to buy that spread. Just take that and put it on the other page that's half empty, right, you know, and move it there. And then I don't have to pay for the spread. So I'll go through and I'll design, and then I'll save it as a JPEG and just upload it. But if you're saving them like this, then you can use them with any printer you use. Whereas if you're designing with print software from a specific company, you can only use it with that company. You can't upload it to the others, which is really helpful for me as well. But if I decide that I like the layout, then I'll save it as a PSD, and then I can just basically go in and overlay the new photos from the next client right over top or underneath them, and go from there. So it just helps give me guidelines for it. So the first time that I design an album, like if I design an album from scratch, and I'm usually around the same you are, like maybe 40 to 50 spreads. Like, I like big albums with a lot of photos when they're events or they warrant it. It'd probably take me 3 to 5 days to design an entire album from scratch, but then I'll go and I'll design 4 or 5 albums, and I usually invent 4 or 5 new spreads for each album, just based off of what their pictures are and how they fit together. So the more that I do, then the more I have to choose from. So now I have probably 50 or 60 different album spreads for a square album that I can pull from if I'm designing, and put different elements in. So I kind of have an idea of what works. And for some of them, like, I would always do pictures of the bride with each of her bridesmaids individually, and one of the groom with each. So I have one spread that fits all of the bridesmaids and the groomsmen that I use very often in albums when I'm doing that, if I'm shooting a wedding or when I was doing weddings. But other ones, you know, in one album, it'll be 3 equal shots of the cake. And in the other one, it'll be a shot of the shoes, a shot of the back of the dress, and a shot of, you know, her tiara or her earrings or something. So they end up looking very unique and different, and not all looking like the same, even though if you really sat down and looked at them as just squares, you can see where the layouts are the same. And then it's the kind of thing where that layout will work really well for one, and then I can take it and I can just take the whole layout and flip it so that the images are on the other side. Or I show it in the video. If you go back and watch at the end, like, I take the shoes and I switch them to the middle of the picture, and then I put 2 more images on the side. So it's 2 and 2, and then the shoes in the middle. But it's just playing. And once you kind of get the feel for it, it goes really fast.
Well, I guess it's like anything else, right? The learning curve is going to slow you down at the beginning until you get more comfortable with it, and things just get easier as you are more comfortable doing them. So
I'm sure that it does, but at the same time, like, if you used to do this kind of stuff, I think it'll come second nature to you. And I like the control element of it. Like, for me, the album is a piece of art, just like the photos that are in it are. So some people, I think, design the album as a collection to hold their artwork. And for me, I want the whole book to feel like art. Like, I want them to wow at the entire page as a layout, not just the images that are on that page. And I feel like you would really do well from that kind of thing too. But you have such beautiful, potent images, but you also shoot in a way that I think allows a lot of negative space, where it would be really easy to have, you know, your daughter throwing the ball and have that be the center, but put two images alongside that are a close-up of her face and a close-up of, you know, his face, so that it makes sense, you know, of them playing and giggling and having a good time. I think that that would work really well. I liked a lot of your album layouts. I had a couple of notes on them. And we can, you know, we can hang out before the next critique if you want and go through, and then you can do some editing with them, or we can just do a level 29 critique with it. But I think you're like 60 to 70% of the way there. I think you're losing a little bit of potency with the images themselves, just because of the sheer magnitude of images. We could probably simplify and cut some. Right. And I think the next step for you, now that we have your art in a place where I think it's sellable, specifically if you're designing around the idea of an album, it's going to be understanding how the images work together on a page collectively, so that they're not competing with each other or distracting you from being able to appreciate each one. But I think that you'll pick it up a lot faster than you think you will. I just think you also have to have control over it and not be trying to work within the confines of somebody else designing the software or the layouts and going, you will decide which 3 images fit here. Because sometimes it's not 3. With one client, they have 3 children and that works great. Another one has 2. You know, what do you do? What's the 3rd image? You know, and maybe you make it work and it's an image of the 2 of them, but maybe it just doesn't work. You know, so being able to have that control and just go delete or take out is really helpful for me. But
I think what I may end up doing is going back and at least maybe going back and rejigging some of them. Maybe, you know, find the ones that I'm least happy with and trying this process from Photoshop instead of using somebody else's software. So, and then just see how that feels and works out.
Well, I'll leave it up to you. If you have time, I don't have another critique until later this afternoon. So if you have time and you want to sit down, we can take a look at it and I can give you some thoughts so you have that to go back with, or you can play with it and bring like a, you know, second draft kind of thing, and we can look at it later.
I think I'll do that. I
Okay.
work better. I just want to, I'll go into Photoshop. I'll start, you know, playing around and seeing what I can come up with, and then we'll just see what happens. I mean, if it totally doesn't work, or I manage something, but then maybe it'll help me narrow down. If I still don't feel good about then I can maybe narrow down what else is making me not feel good about doing it. So then it's not the software, then what else is it, right? So I can just sort of, you know, go through what else is it that might be, you know, holding me back from feeling better about doing them. So
what would the price point have to be at for you to want to order a copy of this album?
Of the one that I just made, I don't know.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because I'm cheap and I don't like spending money. I don't want myself as a client, because I'm a really horrible client that doesn't spend money on anything. I would never spend. I don't own any, because I have, you know, 163,000 photos in my catalog and no albums, because I don't spend money. So
okay,
the price point would have to be, I got a Groupon and it gave me, you know, 80% off or something.
Okay.
I would maybe do
it. Good to consider. Some things that you can be doing before we meet up the next time is coming up with all the arguments for why you shouldn't buy an album, which are probably mostly price related, which is
Absolutely.
Most people's argument for why they don't buy things is the price. And then also maybe putting that list up in the group so that you and I and others can sort of come up with the counter arguments, because you are going to encounter those from clients too. Like, sure. I'm not spending $400 on pictures of my kids. I got them on my iPhone, you know.
And I never have done a professional shoot. I had my wedding photos done 25 years ago, and that's the only time I've ever hired a photographer for anything. So that's it's not a thing that I would do. So that's, you know, I'm not my ideal client, not even by the longest shot.
No, but at the same time, you are your ideal client when you're getting started, because you know all the arguments that everybody else is going to make. Mm-hmm. So if you can come up with the answers, and that's the thing is, I don't want to buy it because X, Y, Z. this is why I won't, this is why I don't think it's worth it. You know, knowing all of those and actually putting them to paper and coming up with every excuse you can to not make that purchase is an awesome exercise, because then you can look at it and go, okay, well, these are my arguments. What would change my mind about it? You know, a discount would, or, you know, maybe a payment plan, or I would have to have it down at this. This is what I think would be more valuable. Well, what would help me feel like that price was worth the cost, you know, and those kind of things, because you will encounter them as we're moving forward. But it also might mean that if you're looking at it and going, I'm not paying $400 for an album, and I can't really justify anybody else investing $400 in an album of my work either, because I wouldn't even pay for it. Then maybe that's something that we're looking at. How do we take that cost down? So maybe we're cutting the spreads in half, you know, instead of it being 40, we're doing 20, because that's probably going to cut almost a third of that cost off. The materials, the company you're working with, those kind of things, you can get the price way down lower than that, which may be a good thing for you depending on who your potential clients are and what their financial situation is. Because, you know, people will invest $3,500 in a session with me, but I'm not oblivious to the fact that that is more than most people's mortgage payments. It's almost double my mortgage payment. So I'm asking people to pay for pictures of themselves in their underwear instead of paying for the roof that is over their children's head that month. Yeah. You know, and that's a tall order. Do some people see the value in it? Yeah, absolutely. Are there some people who, even if they see the value and they're like, oh my God, I would love to have a session done with you, simply don't have that money? Absolutely. You know, and people are like, oh, you have to educate your clients. No, you need to be realistic about what it is you're asking people to part with and how they can actually physically, financially do that, which is why I started offering the payment plans, because I've had people that have come in and they've literally waited a year and they've spent, you know, they've invested $25 a month for 6 months or a year to be able to come in and have the session, and then they'll do it for another year after to pay for the albums, you know, or they'll get digital prints and we'll do less of them and we'll only do 10 instead of 20. But, you know, if they really want it, you know, and they can't afford it, they will never be able to afford to write me a check for $2,000 or $3,000, but they can build 25 or 50 into their budget with their, you know, next to their cell phone bill or something else. So those are all things to think about. Like, okay, $400 is really expensive for an album, but what if it was $25 over the course of the next 12 months, you know, and you got it at the end of the year and you had a payment plan? I do that with my, because with Boudoir, I do the boxes. I don't do albums. And so I'll do a year payment plan and I'll send them an image every month. So it's like, the first of the month, they're like running to the mailbox to look, and they get another print that they can add to their box. And then when the year's up, they have a full collection of images, and it keeps them excited. And I have their credit card on file, so they're not getting a bill from me. It's just auto call charging to their credit card. They're getting the bill from Visa. So they're like, I fucking hate my credit card debt. And then they're like, oh my God, I love JLark though. Look at this beautiful picture of me, you know? So it's all about moving around those things. And I think that's the next step for you. But I really, really, really sincerely believe that with the kind of images that you're bringing to critique right now, that there is no reason that you can't be doing this full time by the end of 2016 and making exactly the kind of money that you want to be making. If I was taking pictures like that, I would be making easily 6 figures by the end of the year for doing just family photography. So all we got to do is make sure that you don't end up killing yourself or somebody else by designing the album covers and the layouts. Which, you know, it might be as simple as, instead of offering an album, that you're doing a box of images.
True. Yeah.
You know, there is something too about being able to pull out a box and go through them like index cards, you know, and pass them around and go, here, you take this half, I'll take this half, and we'll both look at them. So maybe we're just
kind of style of, you know, people often have shoe boxes full of photos anyway.
Oh my gosh. And you're doing this great heirloom quality. What if we actually designed you like a designer shoebox style? And that's exactly what it was. Like, that would be so cute. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all things to be thinking about. And then just drop me a line in the community and let me know, you know, what you're thinking in terms of if you want to do albums and what needs to change for you to hate it less, and, you know, money and what you'd like to be making and that kind of stuff. And we'll start working towards that. But I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So.
It didn't hurt at all anybody, and she's really not that tough. So.
You had a really easy one. You impressed me. Very few people do, but I'm genuinely impressed with all the progress that you're making. And I see a ton of potential. I get excited when I look at people and go, oh my God, I could make so much money if I was them. So that's good, because that's, you know, that's how most of us define our success. Was there anything else that you wanted to chat about or hit on while you had my attention?
Not right now, right? It was just about getting this level 24 out of the way, and then and I guess I have to go into the website. And do I have to do that? Go into the website and request
to make it official?
25
to make it official.
Okay.
So Sphere 2 is still a little wonky, just because I can't individually customize your sphere. So I can't put like your level 24 was bring 5 images and Sandra's was bring 10 spreads. I can't customize them, so it's got general things. So just go in and check mark and say, yes, I did this. With whatever it is, and then it'll send me a thing, and then I can level you up, because I actually can't level you up until you request it.
All right, I'll go do that then.
But yeah, I mean, as far as you and I go, like, I'm paying attention in the group, so you're at that level. The Arcanum says that you're at a lower level right now, though.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I knew, because we're doing things out of order, I wasn't concerned. I'm not concerned about the website part of it, but
yeah,
housekeeping in order, I'll make sure I go and do that. So.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, really, like, when you get to level 29 and you're like, I'm done, I'm ready to graduate and get out of here, I need somebody else besides you, JLark. Then we'll just make sure that we level it up. But until then, it's really not important in Sphere 2. It's growth. Okay. Good. All right. Well, I'm glad I got to hang out with you. Thanks for setting aside the time. And I will see you again at level 29.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.